Hello guys, and welcome to another video. Today I wanted to talk about the major differences between Europe and America. There are quite a few videos already done on the subject of the States versus Europe, from the working culture to the tipping culture. But my focus today is going to be specifically about the difference in mentality, as my channel is all about culture, the way it shapes who we are, the way we see the world, and connect to one another. A disclaimer, I'm not actually American. I live in Canada, which, if you know anything about geography, is on the same continent and is very similar in culture, especially if you live in a city like Toronto, which tries to be like a little clean and polite version of New York. It's not though. I've also spent a lot of time traveling around the US, from Florida to California to Nevada to New Orleans to Washington. So I will talk about the state differences as well. So without further ado, let's get started. The first major difference is the you can do it attitude, so ever present in the States, compared to the more realistic attitude of Europeans.
This is beautiful. I gotta put you in art school. Mommy will put this on the fridge. C'est mignon. Elles sont marrantes tes oreilles. Écoute, ramène tes crayons et puis on va le refaire ensemble.
I really love the contrast shown in this video because it really says it all. The American child that is given the gold star for effort versus the European, in this case a French child, that is told, this is good, but it can be better. In US or Canada, quit your job and start a business and people will build you up. Good for you, go for it, you can do it. You may argue that it's that superficial American attitude that drives you berserk, but Americans truly believe in the sense of possibility. You can achieve anything if you work hard enough. Just do it. And there is something truly beautiful about having the power to change your life at any given moment. You know, as someone who has quit her teaching job to pursue this full-time with no video experience or skills to speak of, I truly believe that you can do anything if you really commit yourself to it. And I mean, truly, I have no life. Europeans don't quite see the world through the same rose-colored lens. Share the same piece of news to a British, German, Polish, or French friend, and the reaction may differ. Of course, the newer generation is much more influenced by social media and alternative lifestyles. Just look at digital nomads, many of whom are Europeans. So it may not be as prominent nowadays, at least in that specific sphere, but it still speaks a lot about the majority. I was having dinner with a new group of friends, and we all went around the circle introducing ourselves and what we do. And everybody was quite confident and comfortable with talking about that. But when it came to the Italian girl that was sitting next to me, she turned to me and quietly said, I don't know how you guys do this. Talk about yourselves with such confidence. In Europe, we don't really talk about what we do like that.
Americans are more optimistic, and that's due to the fact that Americans are told they can become the next president of the United States. British people are told it won't happen to you, and they carry that. They carry that with them. Brits
are the perfect example for seeing the world through cynical glasses. Aim too high and a Brit will tear you down for thinking you're some hot thing. Brits and Irish typically tend to downplay their own achievements, and self-deprecating humor is used to diffuse the spotlight put on the self. I'm constantly talking about the tall poppy syndrome that is ever present in countries like Sweden, Norway, the UK, or the Netherlands. Tall poppy syndrome essentially means that you will be cut down if you think that you're better than anyone else. Interestingly enough, while I put Canada next to the US in terms of comparison to Europe, Canada actually has a form of the tall poppy syndrome as well, since it's closer to the British mentality than to the US. And it's no surprise, since Canada, Australia, and New Zealand are former dominions of the British Empire. And in all three, there is more of an emphasis put on modesty and understatement than in the Big Brother US. Thank you, Britain, for spreading your British genes. And when it comes to other countries, we're well aware of the French and German love of criticism, and Eastern Europeans saying exactly what they mean, no beating around the bush. A 2014 survey showed that 57% of Americans disagreed with the statement, success in life is pretty much determined by forces outside our control, a higher percentage than any other European nations polled. And it's interesting because within Europe, the closest to follow US was the UK, a kind of middleman between the continental Europe and North America. The perspective on the you can do it attitude of the Americans isn't so surprising if you know a little bit of history. We all know that US is the land of immigrants. And who were the immigrants? Well, they were essentially rebels, people who either wanted a change of life or were forced into one. And you must be pretty brave to start your life away from your country. These were people who didn't want to live by the old rules. They wanted to create a land where anything was possible, if only one worked hard enough. The second difference is the small talk culture of Canada and the US versus the hesitation of talking to strangers in Europe.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
This is a common story. A European comes to America and they're instantly taken back by random people striking up conversations with them, offering them compliments, and being highly personable right off the bat. The European is taken back. Why are strangers so interested in me? Maybe they genuinely want to get to know me? So when after a pleasant conversation, when the seeming new friend wishes you a great day or says you should hang out sometime, nothing happens, the European is confused. Was it all just an act? Okay, well then, Americans are fake, superficial, and they don't actually mean what they say. In the US or Canada, small talk and niceties are a standard way of acknowledging each other. The other day I was in a store looking at chocolate. I was having a sugar craving, and this older man came up to me and he said, "Don't do it. Get the dark chocolate. Way better for you." With this, he simply left. He didn't want anything from me and he wasn't crazy. He just felt like saying this to me in the moment. I've also had many instances where people, normally women, would go up to me and say, "Hey, I really like your outfits." And with that, they would simply walk away. So yes, small talk happens often. Usually it's just an exchange of pleasantries. So if someone asks about your day and you start regaling them with a story of how you lost your job and your girlfriend broke up with you or your dog ran away, they're probably gonna go away feeling confused. They don't know what to do with all that information. I've actually tried it in Canada. Not the girlfriend story, but I tend to be very direct, and when I do that, it seems like people's apparatus gets turned off and it's like they shut down. Yeah, I like my small talk big and deep. There's no way to say this without sounding like I'm on OnlyFans. But why are Americans and Canadians so open and have such an affinity for small talk? Well, the first goes down to the peaches and coconut theory that I love talking about. Americans and Canadians are like peaches, with a soft surface and a hard pit. There is more openness to engage with a stranger, to divulge personal information, and to connect. But the pit of the peach is harder to get to. Countries like Poland, Germany, Switzerland, or Denmark are coconuts. You just don't disclose personal information to a stranger. That has to be earned. It is only through real trust that you can get to the hard shell and become good, solid friends. It takes a much longer time, but once built, the friendship typically lasts longer. Another reason that small talk is so common in America is that it is a land built on immigration. And if you were to move here, you generally have to be more mobile and open to meeting people from different backgrounds. In this kind of environment, it is helpful to be open and sociable to create new connections, as immigrants had to start a new life from nothing. But it is also a good idea to keep your beliefs to yourself to avoid shocking or hurting people, as it's harder to know what people think and feel in a multicultural environment than a homogeneous community like Europe. Which might explain why Americans and especially Canadians value agreeableness, while Europeans typically value outspokenness. Now, while your average American is typically more friendly off the bat, there are some European countries that actually tend to be quite friendly. The Irish are a notoriously personable bunch. In many places in the UK, you will be greeted in the store with "How you doing, love?" And if you go to the northeast of the country, a place like Newcastle, people are incredibly friendly. I've once gone drinking with the Geordies, and I have to say they are some of the funniest and warmest people that I've ever met. And they also drink like there's no tomorrow. Then we have places like Italy and Spain that are known for their warm and outgoing culture. And let's not forget the Balkans, where you will be invited to a family party of some guy named Dragoslav that you met at the Cevapi stand all of 5 minutes ago. So as you can see, how genuine and warm people are in Europe tends to differ country by country. In Scandinavia, while people may come off as quite friendly and smiley, it may be incredibly hard to break into the inner shell and get to the deeper level. And then you have countries like Ukraine, Russia, or Poland, where you can get downright intimidated by people's grim faces, only to realize that it is often just a barrier. Eastern Europeans smile for a reason, which can be unnerving if you're not used to it. I think part of it comes down to the fact that people had to often be on guard. They couldn't trust, and some still can't trust, the situation in their country or even their neighbors, whereas Americans had never really experienced such a grim past. And I want to point out that not all of America is created equally. Cities like New York are a lot more abrupt and to the point, and we have Minnesotans, which are closest to Canadians, being just as polite and reserved. And then there is South, like Georgia or South Carolina, which is where you have some real hospitality, and the more superficially friendly places like California, specifically LA, which is where a lot of the fakeness we talk about comes from. Something interesting to point out is that Europeans also do small talk, but the nature of small talk is quite different. In the the US or Canada, the point of small talk is to be positive and uplifting, often filled with funny observations, while in Europe, a lot of it is limited to complaining. People bond over complaining about the weather, their day, and other things that annoy them. In places like the Netherlands or Scandinavia, it's common to talk about the weather or general stuff, but you won't see people divulge any extra personal information. That's reserved for people that you know well, rather than people you met all of 5 minutes ago. I'm sure you've heard of this comparison time and time again if you've been a long-time subscriber. Honestly, I find it hard to say if Americans are definitely not as comfortable around nudity as all of Europe, but there are definitely big differences when it comes to countries like Spain, Germany, France, and the Scandinavian region. There's definitely more of a nonchalant, it's the natural way to be when it comes to nudity in these countries. Not so when it comes to the Brits. According to a recent study, 59% of British people are uncomfortable naked. That being said, the UK recently caused a stir with the release of the show The Naked Attraction, where people actually find a date through looking at a person naked. Yeah, I don't really get the concept of the show, but I guess the Brits really wanted to shock everyone as in, hey guys, look at us, we're not prudes, we're naked. Or maybe things are actually taking a turn in the UK. If you guys are British and you know something about it, let me know in the comments below. Nordics, on the other hand, don't need to make shows to show that they're very comfortable around nudity. In the Nordics, there are no sectioned off showers in the changing rooms like there would be in the UK or US. People just shower together. Finland is popular for nude saunas, and other parts of the Nordics like Norway now feature nude saunas also. And we all know about the nude beaches that are popular in France, Germany, and Spain. Unlike Americans, Europeans don't equate nudity with sex. It's absolutely natural and nothing to bat your eyes at. However, keep in mind that countries like Serbia, Albania, Portugal, Italy, Russia, Ukraine, Poland are on the more conservative side. So Europe is not some nudist paradise as it is often portrayed in the media. When it comes to children in a place like Austria, Germany, or Scandinavia, it's very common to see kids 5 to 10 years old running around in the nude without a care in the world. When I was in Austria, I saw a dad and 2 girls, maybe from 7 to 10 years old, swimming in the nude. And when I was in Sweden, I saw little boys and girls running around naked as well, which made me a little bit nostalgic because this is the way I was raised in Russia. We didn't have the tiny bikinis that you so often see in US or Canada. American laws regarding nudity differ state by state. Most places in Oregon are pretty lenient when it comes to nudity. Austin, Texas is one of the most topless friendly cities in the US, and it's actually completely legal to go out in the nude at many beaches in Florida. Though the numbers do confirm the American discomfort with nudity. According to Expedia Heat Index, only 5% of Americans have gone topless on the beach while on vacation, and only 3% have sunbathed fully nude. And of doing so, only 11% felt somewhat or very comfortable about it. There are many theories about why Americans feel so uncomfortable around nudity, but a lot of it comes down to the puritanical past of the country. Oh, and if anyone's interested in Canada, they take their nudity pretty seriously. You can receive a 6 months prison sentence, a $5,000 fine, or both for being nude.
Sorry.
And the last major difference I wanted to talk about is the focus on the individual in the US and on cooperation and conformity in Europe. Again, it is not surprising. America is the land of immigrants. People used to come here for the American dream. There was a fascinating study done by Richard Fisbett where American children and Asian children were asked to look at the fish tank and to note what they saw. American kids focused on the biggest fish. Japanese and Chinese kids would explain the ecosystem, as in how did the fish interact with each other, and even things like seaweed and rocks. So funny enough, the American kids focused on the uniqueness, on the fish that stood out, whereas the Asian kids focused more on how it all worked together. Now, Europeans are not as starkly different to Americans as Asians, but there were still big differences that I found between the two. One very interesting example, America rates very high for individualism, but Sweden rates even higher for individualism. So is Sweden more individualistic than America? Well, it gets interesting. In Sweden, individualism signifies a self-sufficient and responsible adult. You take care of yourself and don't be an infant type of deal. Yet, and this is a big yet, Swedes also see themselves as a kind of seaweed, fish, rock ecosystem. Consensus is highly valued in the culture. Kids in kindergarten are encouraged to work together. If one kid is doing better, he won't be rewarded but asked to help another kid who's falling behind. And in business, this means that everyone needs to sign off on a decision, from the CEO to the janitor.
Ingrid, do you want to talk? You want to talk?
I think we should have a group discussion about this.
If I could sum up American individualism, it would be go big or go home. This means speaking your mind, not being afraid to be different, take the stage, stand up, and be proud. In the most conformist countries in Europe, like Switzerland, the Netherlands, or Scandinavia, there's an unspoken rule about dressing like everyone else. And I remember walking around Miami Beach and seeing some of the most outrageous outfits with sparkly dresses, big hairdos, gigantic nails, and huge stilettos. In Switzerland or Sweden, there's an unspoken rule about being quiet. You don't get on the train and start shouting, not because there's a sign telling you not to, but because you adjust to the norm. It's the appropriate thing to do. In the US, well, we know that people are loud and there's no issue with expressing your opinion confidently. Confidence in yourself is taught from a young age. It's great to be unique. You are special, so stand out. American movies tend to promote that with stories of people who have achieved great things by not conforming to the norm, and people applaud them for it. Canada tends to find itself close to the US, but not quite there. Canadians are too meek to cause a scene. But what about Southern Europe? A lot of you are saying there is no issue with being loud or expressing your opinion, and this is true. But the collectivist mindset shows itself in a different manner. In Italy, communities are huge. I remember I traveled to Mykonos and noticed how many Italians came with this gigantic group of friends. People here, as well as Greece and Spain, typically tend to move in packs. And let's not forget Ireland, where people are also part of big communities, and everything you do must be peer approved. Ireland has a herd mentality, and daring to stand out of the crowd will get the piss taken out of you mercilessly. So yes, it goes without saying that there are big differences within Europe as well, and even differences within specific countries, as it tends to differ between a bigger city, smaller city, and village mentality. And of course, the newer generations are typically a lot more comfortable standing out and being unique as they grow up in an era of social media. But still, Americans not only accept being unique, they truly praise this quality in people. So that is all for now. I genuinely hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you found it valuable and learned something new today, then please let me know what you thought about it below. I would absolutely love to hear, or rather read, your opinions. So if you feel like it's giving you value and you're not yet subscribed, I would very much appreciate that. And as usual, stay tuned for next week's video, which will be part 2 of the European video that I did 2 weeks ago. If you haven't watched part 1, do so now. Stay curious and keep breaking down your barriers.